This is Front Row MMA, and we're here at the Hilton in Stockholm the night before Gustafsson, Rumble, Johnson square off for that #1 contendership, and we are joined by an icon and a legend and the voice of the Octagon, Bruce Buffer. Sir, first off, thank you so much for spending some time with us.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
You have had an opportunity to see this sport grow, perhaps from a perspective that very few other people have. What are the biggest strides that MMA and the UFC have made since you started?
Well, you know, back when I got started, basically we've gone from spectacle to sport. And back when I started, which my first UFC was UFC 6 to attend, and my first one to announce as a prelims was UFC 8, and then 10, and I've done 13 on, and I think I missed about 9 shows, which are all in the last couple of years because there's so many and I can't be everywhere. It's great to see the progression, because I was at the height of the point when we were the fastest growing pay-per-view on TV in America, and then when Senator McCain called the human cockfighting statement, and you all know that story, we lost in demand and we went down. But thank God for the internet, thank God for the incredible fans that we have. They're amazing, the loyalty, and thank God for DirecTV for keeping us on. We survived that, but the greatest moment in the history of this sport, in my opinion, with all the great fights I've seen, with all the great fighters I've met, with all the great people I've worked with, is the day that Dana White, Lorenzo, and Frank Fertitta bought the UFC. Because when I had my first dinner with them, and I knew Dana before then, I realized at that point that every dream that I've been busting my arse for years, and losing money traveling and doing everything you have to do to sacrifice yourself to fulfill a dream, being that I'm so passionate about my beloved UFC, I knew that the gold and the pot of gold was at the end of the rainbow, and they were going to take us there. That truly was the greatest day in MMA. Now, people might disagree with that, but you got to understand that was the catalyst that brought us to where we are today. Every time I see any three of them, Dana, Frank, Lorenzo, Frank or Lorenzo Fertitta, I mentally bow to these people and thank them for everything I've had the chance to achieve and experience. It's been incredible.
You talked about the UFC 6, which was Tank Abbott's debut, UFC 8, which was the David and Goliath, where Don Fry came to the. Have the athletes themselves changed? Like Don Fry was and you think of guys like Mark Coleman at UFC 10. These guys were, he was an Olympic quality wrestler. Have the athletes changed, or has it just their training has changed?
Well, what's changed is that, back in the days that the fighters were perceived as brawlers getting off bar stools, and then of course you had people like Don Fry that were qualified wrestlers and boxers coming in and fighting, and then the great Royce Gracie, and then of course when the term mixed martial arts was coined, and then the trainings changed, because originally, as we all know, it was a blood sport type, movie type thing, where what style is going to beat that style. And then when jiu-jitsu took over, people realized they had to train jiu-jitsu, and therefore the evolutionary process of mixed martial arts happened. So the athletes back then that were either single course martial artists or multi-coursed became the mixed martial arts. So now the athletes coming in today know they have to train like this. And the thing is, I noticed the big difference with the fighting athletes of MMA versus the boxers, with all respect, because I love boxing, it's apples and oranges, just two different sports. But you have a much more interesting, I find, background to these fighters. They're collegiate, they're university trained, they're Olympic trained. Me being a martial artist since I was 12 in various different styles, is like you're taught blood and honor, you're taught respect. And not that it wasn't happening back then, but we had some crazy matchups back then, which we can all name a million of them. And today you're looking at the finest conditioned athletes in the world stepping into the octagon, because they have now achieved the A level of MMA, with all respect to all other organizations. But when you get in the octagon, that's where every MMA artist wants to be, and if anybody says it's not true, they're lying through their teeth. Or they have a contract with somebody else.
Yeah. What was it? You've been involved in the martial arts. What is it about the martial arts, and particularly MMA, that you think has gripped? Well, it's global now. It is a global phenomenon. Is it just the mano a mano, as Dana likes to say? We fighting's in our DNA, or has the UFC done something through their marketing and through their why is it? What is it that's made the UFC what it is?
The incredible marketing that the UFC does, and people have to understand, the UFC spends gazillions of dollars. A, running its company with its hundreds of employees and hundreds of fighters, to B, spending the millions it takes to advertise a single show. So when you combine the great marketing they put into effect, and Dana's completely correct, it is in our DNA, and that I love his story about a fight on one corner, a basketball game, baseball game, and tennis, the fight breaks out, everybody watches the fight. He couldn't be more correct about that. But think about the fact that in the days of Chuck Norris's reign and Jean-Claude Van Damme and even Steven Seagal, of course, I happen to be one of the people, and I know fighting. I know it from street experiences to dojo experiences to sport experiences. I've experienced all of that. So in respect to the art of fighting, I know the mentality of fighters, I know the mentality of fighting, but I'm still a fan first, and I was still one of those guys that was first in line to see the Seagal movie and the Norris movie when it came out back then. But what the UFC did was it gave a viewpoint of reality to the people that aren't versed in the reality of fighting. And all of us stay up at 2 in the morning and watch Cinemax movies and martial arts movies. We were all glued. They're fight fans. But what this did for the average person is it allowed them to experience what true fighting is all about in sport. In sport. So it's a combination of all the above, and what I like to look at it is an evolutionary process, which has brought us to where we are today, which in turn 10 years from now will bring us to the next level of where we're going to go, because I think it was Uriah Faber that said it today at the Q&A, is that there is they're fighters and stuff, in 20 years we're going to see people that haven't even been born yet. They're going to be the new breed. John Jones is a new breed. You know what? I always like to say that Hoist Gracie came along. When Matt Hughes beat Hoist Gracie, there was a new breed. So Hoist, God love him, became old school. Matt became new school. Matt gets beat by George St. Pierre. Matt becomes old school. George becomes new school. Then we see the flamboyant way that John Jones fights, Anthony Pettis fights, and some of these warriors coming in today. I mean, it blows us all away. And you know what? It's awesome.
This is a question you may smack me for asking, but fair enough. I'm going to hit you with this question. Have there ever been times, and you don't need to be specific, but you've looked at the card and you've looked at the decision and gone, what? And have to mask your own surprise?
Oh my God, yeah. It's like when I'm there, I'm the first one to see it. The commissioners and then me. And I've had to actually ask on many an occasion, and I don't need to tell you which ones because you could probably say which ones. And are you right about that? And even the producer a couple times in my ear will say, Bruce, go back and check that. Go back and check that. And then when I get in the octagon, it's, you know, I come from the school, don't kill the messenger. Yep. I have to do my job. Do I agree with it? No. And I'll walk out and go, what the F was that all about? You know, but so is Dana saying it and everybody else saying it at the same time. But, you know, the bottom line is, Dana, again, to quote Dana, don't put your hands in the judges, don't put your fight, rather, the outcome in the judges' hands. If you can avoid it, finish this fight.
Do judges get a bad rap, or is it just that still, whereas the fighters have advanced and you know the rule base is the unified rules, is it just that judges, maybe some of the judging criteria hasn't quite caught up yet? Is it just a matter of time before we don't have these appalling decisions?
Well, I think you're always going to have these situations happen, because look at the oldest sport in the world, boxing, and one of the oldest sports around. And you look at boxing and you realize that it still goes through this. Now, the days of, I don't want to mention certain names, the days of people that could affect judges, again, you probably know what I'm talking about. It's like, and I'm talking about boxing, there's nothing fixed here. There's nothing, in life comes down to 3 words. Perception is reality. Now, as an example, I'll give you an example how that can work. I'm sitting on the side of the cage the same way the judges are. My face is on the cage the same way the judges are. But I'll go home and watch the video of that fight where I've scored it, as I score fights that I'm watching for my own personal, you know, endeavor. I'll go home and I'll watch those fights, and I actually have changed my opinion. So it's about, you're seeing this, it's live, it's human nature, and that's why you don't put it in the hands of the judges. And if you do, just cross your fingers and hope for the best.
You know, we know fighters from the amateur levels who have gone up and appeared in the UFC, and without question, without exception, and it's going to be a little sycophantic, but every single one of them envisions you calling. You know, they want it's time and your in-ring persona, your in-cage persona developed. I think it grew, and
my own evolutionary process.
How does that come? Do you sit back? How did that happen? Do you sit back and watch and go, okay, what I need to do is this, or how does that happen?
Well, you know, one way I can put it, and I write about this in my book, It's Time. You know, it was released in the UK and America and Brazil. Plug. But it's still available on Amazon.com, and I go into detail about this. But in a short way to put it is, as we all know, when I met my brother late in life, the great Michael Buffer, the legendary Let's Get Ready to Rumble announcer, ring announcing has been around for a long time. But Michael, with his debonair 007 appearance, and the same reason that I saw him on TV, and when I found out it was my brother as a result, when they put his name on the screen, I didn't know I had another brother. And the book explains it. So, with that being said, I didn't want to go into this business. And when I first took over his career, I told him I was going to make you richer and more famous than he ever dreamed, and I wanted to make video games and toys and do all this stuff for his career that had never been done, and we've achieved that, and we're still achieving it. The thing is, though, I never wanted to be Frank Sinatra Jr. And I told him I wanted to be an announcer. We agreed I would not do boxing because it'd be a confliction of interest, and there was really no money in it. But I love the whole persona, the way people probably look at him still, and me, and I'm honored by the words you just said. When a fighter clicks my hand or looks at me while I'm announcing him, that's the great. I'll always cash the paycheck. I'm the first one to the bank. But that is what I live for, and that's a compliment that cannot be taken lightly for me, and it keeps me going. It keeps me traveling around the world, 37 or more shows a year. So I got in the octagon at the time, and I started standing still, and I'm announcing, and I'm thinking, I'm not really having a good time doing this. I'm doing it, and I'm doing what I want to achieve and love, but the passion inside me was burning like fire. And I've been an athlete my whole life, and as you can tell, I'm Italian. I talk with my hands, and it's kind of hard for me to stay still. So, do you ever see Butch Cassidy and the Sundance
Absolutely.
Kid? There's a scene in that film with Paul Newman and Robert Redford, and they're target shooting. And Robert Redford, Newman's telling him to aim, and Redford can't hit the side of a barn. So he looks at Newman and he says, "Can I move?" Right? And Newman says, "Sure." And he moves, and he's pop, pop, pop. See, he's hitting it in bullseye. He's hitting the can. Well, that's the way I announce. It's like, let me move. Let me bring my passion out. Let me throw it on the floor. I don't know what I'm going to do till I do it, whether it's a turn or whatever. The 180, which I used to call a whip turn, the fans called it the Buffer 180, that was created by accident. The 360 was created by force, thanks to my buddy Joe Rogan and the video that went viral. And when I came out of the corner with Frank Mir turning to that monster Lesnar, and I realized left brain, right brain talking as I'm announcing, I said, if I don't do this 360 right now, I'm going to be the bitch of the internet on Monday, and I don't really feel like opening up and reading the Underground on that one. So I was going to do it anyway, but it kind of gave me a thing to do. And like I said, I've been a martial artist my whole life. When I say martial artist, meaning I've practiced and trained, and I've achieved my own levels and my own goals. And with respect to that, I just like to move, and I'm very athletic. And it's the day that I lose my passion, because I walk in that octagon, every night I walk in there, I do not live on my laurels. You will never hear me say, I did this last year, I did this last week, that's me. No, I am only who I am today. Every time I walk in that octagon, to me, it's my first show. And I want to do the best job I can to enhance that moment for the fighters, to enhance that moment for the people watching in the arena and the fans at home, to enhance it for my little mama who's watching, and to enhance it for myself. So I can feel proud and say, hey, all I want to know is I did my best. Respect me for that, because I treat everybody around me with respect, and I just want to be treated the same. I believe we're all created equal. It's just about the paths we choose. So in my life, when I choose a path, I want to be the best at what I do, or at least be perceived as such by myself. And I'm my own worst critic. But I'm always learning. I'm always learning, and I'll continue to.
The one thing that's sitting next to you it's palpable is your passion for the sport, your excitement, and this might be a hard question then. As a fan, is there a fight that hasn't happened yet that you would love?
Well, there's been a number of them. I've always wanted to see John Jones and Anderson Silva go at it. Most definitely. I love watching John Jones as his career grows. The Conor McGregor-Jose Aldo fight, I'm hugely looking forward to. And man, I'm gonna I'm going to roar the roof off that place.
You might have to.
Yeah, I might have to just to be heard. Yeah, exactly. The Irish are incredible, man. I love them, and you know the Brazilians. They honor me with their 20,000 fans in arena, saying it's time with me. I feel so humbled. I'm so honored to go through all these experiences, because basically I'm a fan first. So yeah, dream matchups. There's a lot of them. And I've seen them, you know, seen a number of them. I'd really have to, you have caught me off guard, I'd really have to think first, no, it's okay. This is what it's all about. But yeah, there's a number of dream matches, but I say right off the top of my head, I mean, Anderson Silva and Jon Jones, when Anderson, comes back, and I've talked to him in the last couple months when I saw him, and I really believe he's back to 100%. Because you got to, you know, really when you think about it, being knocked out, having your leg break when you're throwing a kick and getting checked, you're going to think about this. But he's probably in the gym, sparring, getting it all that out of his system. And I think Nick Diaz is a great, exciting opponent for him, for all of us to see. It's going to be a fun fight to watch. I think he's going to, I think like I read today, he said this is the beginning of my, I don't know, call it a second career, or the beginning of my career again. So he's looking at it mentally the right way, and I hope to see that Anderson Silva come back and see some of the dream matches to go against him. But you know, the UFC has the champions that are coming in now, you know, with Pettis, and I can't wait till Kane gets healthy again, and Verdum is doing a great job. He's a great job. On and on and on. There's so many great fighters now. It's like people ask me, and you might want to ask me this in a second, what's some of the greatest fights I've ever seen? Quite honestly, I've forgotten more than I can remember. I can only give you examples of some. So, let me tell you something about you and your job and you and what you do. And I'm pointing to the man behind the camera, folks.
Yeah.
So, because it's a team effort with all of us. I'm doing my little part, and you're doing your little part. If it wasn't for the MMA media that is either monetizing or not monetizing their job, that is working on the passion the same way I am, I look at you and the people around you that have been in this for years as pioneers of the sport also, because you're bringing it to the forefront to allow people to appreciate what we love. So, thanks to you.
I'm not often speechless, but thank you.
This is what it is. I don't butter people's bread. I tell it the way it is.
When we think of the UFC, there are names that we think Joe Rogan, we think Bruce Buffer, we think Dana White, we think there is going to be a time, hopefully long in the future,
for another 10 years or more,
where there is going to be. Are the fans going to be able to accept that change? Do you think is the UFC going to be able to? Is there going to be because a world without Dana on The Ultimate Fighter, without the do you want to be an bleeping fighter, without the it's time, without Joe Rogan's that's the greatest. It seems that we've been spoiled a little bit as MMA fans, and we know it can't last forever. Are there things or is it far too far in the future to?
You know. Again, I get back to the fact that every time I step in that octagon, it's the first night I ever walk into the octagon attitude. And I want to give everything I can to make that experience enhanced for everybody, including the fighters. For me to say that I'm going to be missed, I would like to leave that up to the fans, because I really don't, and I wouldn't make that kind of a statement. All I know is that I'm here, and I'm here doing my job, and everybody is expendable, because that's the way life is. We leave our mark. So on that tombstone, if it says that I got you excited one night, or I did my best, well, that's really all I want to know. That you thought I did my best and you respected me for what I do. And if you remember me, then I'm truly honored by that. And the next person will have their style, you know, that becomes the main voice of the octagon. And I have respect for all announcers that want to come in. Now, I know there's probably 5,000 or more guys out there waiting for me to drop dead. And I may one night, you know, I was thinking about how I want to go, and I thought, you know, I think I'm going to do it. Boom, you know, first death in the octagon or whatever. So I'm not crying or that. I just had to wipe something away. But it's like, you know, life is life, and things happen. Just try to have the most fun you can, and don't put too much emphasis on it. And like I said, just have the most fun. I hope you all get to enjoy what you do, because I love what I do. I love what I do, and if it doesn't show, then you're missing something. That's all I can tell you.
Well, you know, I'm going to speak for MMA fans. It will be a sad day when Bruce Buffer says it's time.
It's time to go.
Time to go. Because again, you are synonymous with some of the greatest moments in the sport. It's simply that there must be people who have helped push, support, guide. Anybody that you'd like to give a shout out to, and I know there must be thousands, so some people are going to be upset about it, but if there's anyone you'd like to give a shout out to, anyone you'd like to thank, please.
It's like an Oscar acceptance speech. How do you get it all in 60 seconds? The first people I would ever want to thank, and if you ever do, and I'm not plugging at this point, I'm saying you'll realize the kind of person I am if you read my book, and you'll understand. I put my heart on the table on that book. You don't write a book unless you can do that. But getting back to your question, I want to thank my mother and my father and my brother Brian, because that's my family. You know, my family is my base. Michael I met in later years. I want to thank Michael. And when I first got in this business, which I did it all on my own, you know, people can say riding the coattails back in the old days. No, I sewed those coattails on. I'm his manager. I'm his partner. And I, like I said, I developed my own style. But I asked Michael one time, I said, Michael, what advice can you give me? And he gave me the greatest advice I could give anybody else. He said, Bruce, I really can't tell you anything except watch yourself on video. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do and the best teaching aid there is. And he was right. It is. And I suggest that to people too. I truly want to thank, I'll do it this way, all the great fighters that have put their blood, sweat, and tears on the line. And I've made great friendships out of this. Without going into individual names, so as not to spoil other names, I want to thank every fighter that set foot in that octagon, and I've announced almost every other MMA event, including in the UK, you know, years ago when they were around before I became exclusive. I want to thank every promoter I've worked with, but I truly want to thank Robert Meyerowitz, who gave me my start, and I want to thank Dana White, and I want to thank Lorenzo and Frank Fertitta, and because again, I owe them everything. And I'm their loyal soldier, and I will be forever. So everybody I've worked with, everybody I've been friends with, and everybody I've experienced my own blood, sweat, and tears with on this path over the last 19 to 20 years, I want to thank them all.
Bruce, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. It's much appreciated. Knock 'em dead tomorrow night.
I will, and if I may, and thank you so much. And if I may, can I do one little plug? My web manager and my team just designed my new site at brucebuffer.com. One of the things that I love to do, and I mentioned this before, is I do special recordings for the fans. I'll do inexpensive introductions to I take all requests, but I really specialize in weddings and birthdays and special occasions and stuff like that. I get a big kick, and I make it very affordable. I make it a big kick out of how it makes their life special, and it makes me tear up when I get their emails and I see the videos and all that. It's a side business along with all the other businesses, and don't even ask me about that. It's a whole other thing. So I'm here for the fans, because without the fans, we're nothing. You know, and they're the reason we're here, they're the reason that we earn our paychecks, and they're the reason that we're growing. And I want to thank the fans. And the question you asked, I forgot to thank who is really truly integral in this cog of a wheel, and that's the fans out there that are watching your show and are part of this. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. And
I ditto. Thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. I could keep you for hours. Thank you so much, sir. A pleasure. Thank you.